What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope everyone's doing super well. And in today's exciting video tutorial, we're gonna be going over how to construct a collection view 100% programmatically. Now, if you're trying to better yourself as a developer, this is something that you should definitely understand how to do. Working with collection views is something that happens a lot in iOS development, and understanding how to do it 100% programmatically is gonna really help you improve your skills as a developer. And we're going to be making this super cool user profile completely programmatically, and we're going to use a collection view to do it. Now, really quick before we get started, it's important to know that we did construct this profile header view in a previous video 100% programmatically, and that's what the source code you see here in front of you is. So I'm going to post a link to that in the description. Otherwise, we're just going to start out with this profile header here, and then we're going to be constructing all of these collection view cells 100% programmatically and converting this view controller from a view controller to a collection view controller. So that's where we're going to be starting in this video. If you followed along with the last video, you already have all this code. If not, just go ahead and download the link in the description. Or if you want to build this out yourself, just go ahead and click the link in the description for the user profile header video tutorial. All right, guys, now that we've gotten through that explanation, let's go ahead and get started with the code. Before we jump into the code, guys, I want everyone to head over to udemy.com and check out my online courses. I have 3 of them up right now. My favorite one is building an Instagram clone from scratch with Swift4 and Firebase, MapKit Mastery, and how to build a Pokedex app. So having a project like this in your portfolio is going to be so crucial if you want to actually get a job as a professional iOS developer. You can show projects like this off to potential employers. And what a lot of you don't know is that with this Instagram clone, I used this in a job interview, and my employers were so impressed that they hired me the very next day, making over $100,000 a year. Now guys, I'm completely self-taught. I built this project on my own, and they were so impressed with it that I had that in my portfolio that, like I said, they hired me the next day with a 6-figure salary. So if you guys want to take your skills to that professional level, I highly recommend checking out my courses. It's a $13 investment, and for the level of quality and the amount of content and the amount of explanation that you're getting and the amount of tools that you're going to be able to have in your toolkit as a developer after you finish these courses, it's a steal of a deal. So go ahead, go over to Udemy. The links are in the description to this video. Check my courses out, guys. I promise it will make you a better programmer. So now let's finally go ahead and get started with the code. Okay guys, if you haven't already, you should download the template source code for this project, which is going to be our starting point. And when you run that code, this is what you're going to have in front of you here. It's not a collection view controller yet. We just have this user profile header, and we are going to be converting it into a collection view controller, and it's going to look like this by the time we're done with this video. So go ahead and make sure you download that template source code and run it, and make sure your project is looking like this. Okay, now what we're going to do to start off is we're going to start by converting this UI view controller to a UI collection view controller. Okay, so go up to the top of your view controller class and say UI collection view controller, just like that. And if you were to run your project right now, it would crash. So let's see that happening in real time. So it's going to try and run. We're saying it's terminating with type NS exception. And if we see instantiated view controller with identifier blah 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 from storyboard, but didn't get a UI collection view. So right now, this view controller file that we have is linked to our storyboard file, and it's set up as a UI view controller, and that's just how Apple projects automatically start out. But that's not what we want. We're not going to be using that storyboard at all, so we're not going to mess with that file. What we need to do is hop into our app delegate file. Okay, so go to this app delegate file here, and we need to hop into this function did finish launching with options. So this is the override point for customization after application launch. So this is where we're going to configure our root view controller. The root view controller is the starting view controller of your application. If you guys have used storyboards before, that little arrow that points to the initial view controller, that's your root view controller. But we're doing this programmatically, so we need to set this up in our app delegate file. So this is pretty simple to do. We're going to say window equals UI window. And if we look at what this is, the backdrop for your app's user interface and the object that dispatches events to your views. So that's what this variable is up here. And again, this comes with this file when your app starts, no matter what, right? So Right now it's optional. We need to set that to a UI window, just like that. And then we're going to say window dot make key and visible, shows the window and makes it the key window. And then we need to say window dot root view controller equals our view controller here. That's what we're setting it to. And this is not to be confused with, like, I'm going to rename this really quick. So let's call this like profile controller. We don't have to do this, but this is just to give you guys a better understanding of what's going on, because I don't want you to get confused and think that because we're calling this view controller, which is what it was called before, that's what the, it's not, that doesn't mean it's a UI view controller. That's just the name of it, which is kind of confusing. That's why we changed the name to profile controller. So we're going to say profile controller. And let's build our project, see if we get any errors. Okay, build succeeded. That's because we changed the name here, and you also have to make sure you change the name in that class declaration there. So go back to your app delegate, and because this is a collection view, like let's run this again. We're still getting that error there, but it should be a different error, right? Terminating app due to uncaught exception. Reason UI collection view must be initialized with a non-nil layout parameter. So these two parentheses here, that's a constructor. That means, hey, initialize this thing or render it for me, right? So when we open it, because it's a collection view controller, we notice that we're going to have these initialization options. We can initialize it with a coder, a collection view layout, or a nib name and bundle. Our exception was that we didn't give it a collection view layout. So we need to initialize it with this collection view layout parameter. So here we're going to go and pay close attention to this, guys. We're going to say let layout equal UI collection view flow layout. You have to make sure it's a flow layout. If you just do UI collection view layout, this is not going to work. I know it's kind of confusing. I think Apple should make this a little less ambiguous, but it is what it is. So we're going to say UI collection view layout, and you're going to initialize that, and then just pass that layout parameter in there. You guys could also just put this here, but I'm doing it here just to make things a little clearer. Okay, now if we run our code, we are not going to see any errors, but it's just going to be a blank screen. Oh, it's actually, no, we're looking good. So this is black here, and we need to change the background color of that, and then we're going to make some other changes to make this collection view work. So let's hop back into our profile controller now. And we're going to go here into our view.did_load method. And instead of view.background color is white, we're going to say collection view.background color is white. And then if we run that, we're going to notice that our collection view is going to be showing up now. So that's looking good. Okay, now we could leave this like this, guys, but I'm actually going to show you how to make this an actual header for your UI collection view. So there's two ways to do this. You can make this, you can just keep this here statically, which is perfectly fine. Or you can make it, collection views have an element type that's a header or a footer view, just like table views do. And we can make this container view here actually part of our collection view by making it the collection view's header, which is what we're going to be doing because I think it's important to know how to do that. So we're going to create a new file. So we're going to go up to our folder name here, and we're going to say new file, Swift file, and we're going to say profile header. Create, import UI kit here. We're going to say class profile header, and this is going to be a UI collection reusable view. And let's just go ahead and initialize it here, super.init with that frame. It's going to ask us to initialize it with a required initializer, so just go ahead and hit that and hit fix. And this is standard for whenever you are creating like a custom like little subclass like this, right? So now what we're going to do is we are going to go back to our profile controller, and everything that we have in this container view, we are going to just move it over to that profile header view. So we got to take all this code here, right, up to profile image view, cut it, hit Command X, and then we're going to go into our profile header file, make a mark, just like that, section our code off nicely. And we're going to add in all those view components. Now this is just a declaration of these views and their corresponding configurations, like the content mode, the layout, the border width, the colors, all that stuff. So we're getting an error because we don't have these functions in here. So let's go back here, cut these guys out, put it in there as well. And if we hit build, those are going to go away. Okay, so now go back to your profile controller, and we need to take all this code out from our container view, cut that with Command X, go back to our profile header, and in your initialization function, where we have this override init, this is where we're going to add in all that code to add the subviews to our view, right? So it's kind of important, if you guys didn't go through the last video, to go through that, because we go over how we create this helper function here to anchor our view components to our view, like how we give it all those constraints, and that's in our profile controller here with this UI view extension. So I go over this in detail in the other video. So if you guys want to know what's going on there, make sure you check that out. Again, the link's in the description to this video. So guys, because this is a UI collection reusable view, or it's a subclass of UI view, we're not inside of a view controller, we're getting all these errors here because we are saying view.backgroundColor or view.addSubview. We don't need this view guy here. So what we're going to do is just hit Command F, search for view, and let's see, I don't think we can, yeah. So let's go search for view, go up here and go to replace, and just with text, or let's search for view dot, right? That's gonna be a bit of annoying. Okay, let's just delete this stuff manually, guys. So just go to all those view guys and delete that view dot prefix. It's gonna take a second, but we'll get it done. And by the end of it, you should have deleted all the view dot things in there, because when we don't need that view dot prefix, because when we say background color, it knows that it's referring to the background color of this profile header. Whereas in a view controller, you have to specifically reference the view. So do that. And now our build is going to succeed. And if we run our code now, I'm pretty sure we're going to be getting a blank screen, because we actually have to set up our collection view header now. So let's go back to our profile controller, and we are going to want to delete this container view. We don't need it anymore. And we are going to now delete this from here as well. Okay, so now what we need to do is set up our collection view header. And we need to declare it in the code and then write some code to make sure it appears up on the screen. So in our viewDidLoad method, we are going to go ahead and say collection view dot register, or say self dot collection view dot register, and we're going to see a couple options here. We're going to want to select this guy that says view class. Registers a class for use in creating supplementary views for the collection view. This is how we're going to create our header. So select that guy, and we need to register this class here. So we're going to say profile header dot self. For supplementary view of kind, say UI collection view dot element kind section header. So this is just an identifier, and you can delete that UI collection view guy because Swift will recognize this dot element kind section header without it. It's easier to do to get it to show up in the autocomplete at first. Let's see. Okay, so we need to put a bang at the end of that collection view guy right there. And we need to create a reuse identifier really quick. So we're going to say private let header identifier equal profile header. And I created above the class declaration, guys, because this is just how Apple does it. Like if you create a UI collection view controller out of through the Cocoa Touch class, they put these identifiers above there and make them private. So that's why I do it that way. And then here, just pass in that header identifier. And it's better to create a constant and put it here because we're going to need to use this in another place. So it's good to just put it in this header identifier constant so we don't have to type this out twice and then introduce some room for error. So let's see, ambiguous reference to member collection view. That should be fine. Don't worry about that for now. Okay, so that's looking good. Now we need to go and create some more extensions here. So we've registered the header. Now what we need to do is create some extensions for this profile controller. So we're going to create two: extension, profile controller, and this one needs to conform to the UI collection view delegate flow layout. So through this this protocol here, we're going to have access to some methods in that is part of the collection view framework that we're going to be able to use to define the size of our cells, of our header, register our header, things like that. So let's go and start typing out reference size for header and section. And this is going to be the function that gives us back our header size for this collection view. So we're going to say return CG size and use a width that's CG float and height CG float. Say u.frame.width for the width, and then the height is going to be 300. All right, guys, now that we've set up our collection view size by implementing this function that we get through our collection view delegate flow layout protocol, if we were to run this, we'll still get this blank screen, and that's because there's a couple more things we have to do. So even though we've registered the header, and oh guys, to fix this error, we do need to say UI collection view dot element kind section header, and we can go ahead and delete that self dot prefix there, and that's going to solve our build issues. But there's one more thing we need to do in order to get our header to show up. So we need to hop in, and guys, I added in these marks for to help compartmentalize our code here, to just help organize it a little better, help us figure out what's what and where everything is. So this is where we're going to be writing our delegate and data source methods. And if you guys don't know what that is, I'll explain it in a second. This is where we wrote our collection view delegate flow layout methods. And that's where we did set up our size for our header. So we're going to go into this function. One sec. Okay. And then we're going to start typing out view for supplementary something of kind. Ask your data source object to provide a supplementary view to display in the collection view. So we need to implement this function to get our header to show up, right? So hit enter on that, and it's going to return a UI collection reusable view. And if we go to our profile header, we notice that this is of type UI collection reusable view. So they are going to match up perfectly. So now what we need to do is say let header equal collection view dot DQ reusable supplementary view of kind blah blah blah. Returns a reusable supplementary view located by its identifier and kind. So we have the kind up here in our registration call, and we have the reuse identifier in that as well, and then we have the file that we want to give it. So that's where this collection view register function or function call comes in. So now when we select this, it's going to ask us to pass in a kind, which is going to be this guy here. So just say kind. With reuse identifier, we're going to use the header identifier that we created here. So we're going to say header identifier. And like I said, it's easier to just make this a constant so we don't have to type out profile header in two places. And if we want to change it, we only have to change it in one place, which is also nice. That's important programming practices to understand. And now here, we're just going to pass in the index path, which we get through access of an input parameter for this function. And now we just need to return that header. And if we run our code, we should see that header finally showing up. And I'll go over this in a little bit more detail. Right, so we see our header showing up. We're going to fix this white space here. But really quickly, I want to just explain everything that's going on here. one more time. So again, this function is going to give us back our collection view header. In order to have a collection view header, we need to register that header with our collection view. So that's what we do in our viewDidLoad method. We register that profile header. So here is the file name that we're registering. We're telling it that it's a UI element, it's a collection view header when we say for supplementary view of kind. And then we give it this reuse identifier. And we see these things that we used in order to register our collection view in this function where we're trying to return our header view. Sorry, when we register our header in our collection view. So the kind that it's going to pass in or recognize is this UI element section header. So it knows that it's a collection view header, so it's going to put it on top instead of if it was a footer, it would be on the bottom. Then we have the same reuse identifier here and here, so that matches up perfectly. And then we know that it's this profile header, so it's going to give us back everything we have in this file here. So that's why that's showing up, guys. Now really quickly to get rid of this white space here, it's pretty simple. We're just going to say collection view dot content inset adjustment behavior equals dot never. So basically this little safe area up here is unique only to the newer iPhone devices, iPhone X models and up. This is not part of the screen in other phone models. So basically what it's doing is it's like compensating for that. It's saying, so if we were to run this on like an iPhone 7, the sizing and the spacing would be correct, but we don't want that. So we're just going to say dot never, and it's going to fill that space in for us there, because we don't want we don't want that inset adjustments, right? We just want it to be what it is. So that's looking good there. Now that we've done that, we need to go ahead and start configuring our collection view cells. And it's going to be extremely similar to the process we used to configure our header, so it's going to be a little simpler. Let's go ahead and get started with that, guys. Okay, guys, so let's talk a little bit about what's left for us to do. We need to create our collection view cell because we want our project to look like this. So we need to create each one of these cells, give it some properties, then we need to register our cell here, and then we need to implement some delegate and Datasource methods to tell our collection view how many cells we want it to have. And then we need to dequeue our reusable cells like the same way we dequeued this reusable header. And then we need to implement a function to determine the size of each one of our cells. So really quickly, guys, if you don't know what this dequeuing means, basically what it does is when a cell is not on the screen, so like if I scroll up, those cells disappear from the screen, it dequeues them from memory. So instead of all the cells that exist in your collection view being in memory at the same time, what this dequeuing method does is when they're off the screen, they are removed from memory, and only when they are going to come back onto the screen are they put back into memory. Because if you tried to have 500 collection view cells in memory all at once, it would either crash your application or it would just take up so much space that it would start moving extremely slow. So that's some really nice functionality that we get from Xcode and Swift, where the cells automatically queue and dequeue for us based on whether or not they're going to be showing up on the screen. So that's what that means. So now let's go ahead and get started by creating a new file for our collection view cell. So go up here and you can hit Command N or right click and hit New File, select Swift File, and then we're going to call this profile cell. And similar, so let's just go import UI kit, class profile, cell, and this is going to be of type UI collection view cell. And then here, let's make our marks, properties, lifecycle, init, super.init, frame. Then it's going to ask us to implement this required initializer here. Just go ahead and do that. And now that we have that, let's go back to our profile controller and let's register our collection view cells. So let me do some stuff here. So we're going to say register header, register cell. So now we're just gonna do the same thing, collection view dot register, and we're gonna select a different method here. Instead of this view class, because this is a view here, we want to select cell class. Register is a cell class for use in creating new collection view cells. So select that guy, and we are going to say profile cell dot cell. Oops, profile cell dot self. You have to say dot self. I'm not really sure why, but you just do. Now we need to create another identifier, so we can just go ahead and copy this and change this to cell identifier, and we'll just say profile cell. So pass in that identifier so we can reuse it later. So that's all we need to do to register our collection view cell. If you guys tried to do all the stuff in your delegate and Datasource and flow layout stuff without registering your cell or registering your header, your program would crash. Because it's like, hey, we're trying to set up this cell, but it hasn't been registered. I don't recognize it, so it crashes. So now let's go here and implement some other methods. We're gonna say number of items in section, not number of sections, just number of items in section. We don't need that number of sections because it just defaults to 1. Unless you wanted multiple sections in your collection view, that's the only time you would need to introduce that. So for now, let's just say return 12. So that's going to give us back 12 cells. And then here we're going to say cell for item at. So this is our function similar to what's going on with our header that's going to return our collection view cell. So we're going to do the same thing we did here, right? We're just going to say let cell equal collection view dot dequeue reusable cell. Pass in the identifier we created, so cell identifier, index path, and here we need to cast it. Oh, we need to cast this guy as well. We don't need to, but we will. Okay, so we need to say as profile cell, boom, and then return cell. Okay, guys, go back up here, and we need to cast this as well. So like say we wanted to access any of the elements in our header. Like say we wanted to look at this profile image view from there, or the message button, or blah, blah, blah. We won't be able to do that unless we cast this header. So go ahead and here and say as profile header. And then now, like if I wanted to do something with the image view, I can, they see I have access to all the UI elements in there as well, in there now that we've cast it as a profile header. So I know it's a little annoying to have to register it as this file and then cast it, but that's just what we have to do. Blame Swift, not me. And we do the same thing here, right? So let's just go here and say cell.background color equals .red for now. And if we were to run this, I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen because we don't have our sizing set up yet, but let's see. Okay, it just gives us back some automatic sizing. And these are all the collection view cells that we have, right? So basically what we're going to be doing is in our cell file, we're going to add an image view to each one of these cells and then set that image in our profile controller class so that we can get these super awesome images of Venom back. All right, so now let's go ahead and set up the sizing for each one of our cells. So we want 3 cells in each row. And it's actually pretty simple to do this. And we want 1 pixel of space in between all of our cells. So there's going to be a couple things we got to do that. So go into your delegate flow layout section and go here and say size for item at. And here, this is where we're going to set up the size for each one of our cells. So like, let's say let width equal, and we're just going to say view.frame.width divided by 3. And then we're going to say return CG size width, width, and width. So guys, we want this to be a square. So that's why we have the width and the height both set to this width guy that we created. And we're dividing it by 3 because that's what we want it to look like. But we're going to notice that this isn't going to come out looking like this, but I'm kind of going through this process with you guys so you understand the math behind it, because there is some math involved. So we don't get our desired effect, right? The cells are about like the right size, but we need to introduce some spacing here because what it's trying to do is trying to fit another cell in here, but we need to adjust the size just a little bit in order for it to work. So because we want these 2 pixels of space, we actually need to just subtract 2 from this and then divide it by 3. So we need to say view.frame.width minus 2 and then divide that by 3. And let's put parentheses around this so it does that first and then divides it by 3. And I'm pretty sure that this isn't going to work as well. There's going to be some other methods we need to introduce. So yeah, that doesn't work yet. So we need to introduce 2 other methods. So we're going to go ahead here and say minimum line spacing. So this is going to help control the spacing between our cells. Ask the delegate for the spacing between successive rows or columns of a section. So successive rows or columns, this gives us that spacing. So just hit enter, and then we're just going to say return 1, because we just want 1 pixel of space. And then we're going to say also start typing out minimum interim spacing. Ask the delegate for the spacing between successive items in the rows or columns of a section. So this is the amount of space between each cell. This function is the amount of space between each row or column. So now we're going to just say return 1. And then if we run that, this is now going to give us back our desired layout for our cells. So that's looking super awesome, guys. So in order to mess with this, if you wanted some more spacing here, like subtracting 2 gives us 2 pixels of space. If I wanted to subtract 4 to get now not 1 pixel of space between each cell, this would give me like the right dimension for the cell, because we're accounting for the fact that we want 2 pixels of space between each cell. There's 2, we have 2 elements of spacing. It would be 2 here plus 2 here, which is 4. So that's why we subtract 4. And then here we would need to replace these guys as well. So minimum interim spacing would go to 2. And let's see if that works. We need to change the height to 2 as well, because the height is the same as the width. If we wanted 2 pixels of space there, we just do that, and we'll see that that's how that's working. So I know I'm taking a lot of time to explain this stuff, guys, but you see now that we get more spacing there, which looks good, but let's keep it at 1 because that's what Instagram does. So that's the math involved there. I hope that makes sense to everyone. Now, final process, which is going to be pretty simple. We just go into our profile cell and we're going to create an image view here. So because we have already done that work in our profile header, where we have this profile image view, we're just going to copy this code, put it here, and rename it. We're just going to say image view. And right now it has an image. We don't need this border width and border color, so just do that. And then we're going to add this image view to our subview, right? So here's the image view declaration with all the properties. Now we need to add it to the cell's like actual view, give it some constraints, and it's going to be really simple. We just want to pin it to the corners. So we're going to say image view, or we need to add subview, image view.anchor, and we don't need height, width, or any of the padding, guys. So just delete all those. Because when we anchor it to the top, left, bottom, and right, we don't need to, obviously we don't want any padding, and we don't need to set the height and the width because we have given it 4 constraints. So it figures out the width for us. It'll just be the width and height of the cell. So you're just going to say top anchor, left anchor, bottom anchor, and right anchor. And for this image view, we have it set to some image right now. So yeah, let's go ahead and just run that. And it's going to be all of these images of Venom here, right? But we want different images, obviously. So guys, download the completed project, not the template source code, but the completed project if you want to get all these images of Venom here that I have. And we're going to set it up in the cell really quick. And we're doing that not just to make it look fancy, but because there's actually a pretty important concept in here as well. So go ahead and hop back into your profile controller. And I'm going to create an array of images, and we're going to use that array of images to populate our collection view cells. And this is really important to understand because anytime you create a collection view, you're going to have some data source, right? Whether in this case, it would be like posts. And you're usually going to be doing something like fetching those things from an API. But essentially, you're going to need to create an array and use that array to populate your collection view. It's usually going to be a custom object like a post or a user or something like that. But in this case, it's just going to be static because we're not working with an API. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste this over from my completed project. Actually, I'll show you guys how to do it. So say let images, or we should create this as a variable. So var images UI image. Well, sorry, it needs to be an array of UI images. And to create this, just go ahead, and because we've cast it as an array of UI image, we can just go ahead and start typing out image literal, double click on that guy, and then select any image you want. And then you're just gonna go and do that a bunch of times until you get, all the images that you want. I'm gonna go ahead and copy and paste the completed one that I have, just to save us some time. We don't need to make it a variable now, but you should if you're working with an API, because your data source isn't going to start out being automatically populated. You're going to need to fetch that information from an API and then populate it, or append images, or whatever your array is, you're going to need to append elements to it, and you can only do that if it's a variable. It has to be mutable, but in this case we don't need to do that. So now this is where the magic happens, right? So we have, X amount of elements in this array. That's how many elements we want our collection view to return, or how many cells we want it to return. So in here, instead of just saying the static return 12, we can return images.count. So it's just going to give us back the amount of elements we have in this array as our amount of collection view cells. So even though we did that, it's still going to be all that same image. We actually have to do one more thing to set the image. And this is, extremely important. But now you see, we don't just get back 12, we actually get back 15 items, and our collection view starts scrolling for us, which is really nice. So this is looking good, guys. So now, remove this guy, we don't need that. So now what we need to do is go into our self or item at function. All right, first let's go into our profile cell here. So we're gonna go here and create a variable called image. That's going to be of type UI image. Make it optional, and then say did set, like this. So then we're just going to say guard let image equal image else return, and then we're going to say image view dot image equals image, and then we're going to go back to our profile controller, and we're going to say cell dot image. We need to build this for this to show up, so hit Command B. And now that's going to show up in our autocomplete. Yep, cell.image equals images index path.row. So now when we run this, and don't worry guys, I'm going to explain all that because I know it's probably kind of confusing. But now we see that this is showing up really nicely, and it's giving us back all our images. So let's go over this explanation really quickly, then our video is going to be done. So let's start out with going back to our profile cell. We created this variable that's going to be an image, and if say this was the case of like Instagram, these would all be like posts, right? So you'd have to create a custom post object and then make it of that type, but here it's just an image. So basically this is where we're going to be passing an image from our controller to our cell. We're going to say, hey, take this image, put it in this cell. That's what we're doing here. So we have to make sure we cast it to be the correct type. It needs to be a UI image, and this did set guy is super important. So when we say in our profile controller cell.image equals something, right? When it sets that, when that action executes, and it's going to execute for each cell. We'll go over that in a little bit too. This did set guy is going to get called. It's going to say, hey, it got set. So anything that happens within that block of code executes once it gets set. So we're going to check and just make sure the image exists with this guard statement. So we're putting this image here, storing it in this constant, making sure it exists. We could also comment this out and put a bang here, because we are making this optional, because the cell doesn't start out with an image. It has to get set first. So we want to make it optional. So you could do either one of those two things. I prefer to do the guard statement because if for some reason something gets messed up, the guard statement gets hit and it just returns out of this function. You're not trying to force it to unwrap something so you won't get a crash. So safely unwrapping is almost always the way to go. So once it sets, then we say image_view.image equals image, right? So we're looking at this image here. And here we could call this something else. You know, we could call this cell image view, and then just change it. Oops. Just to make that a little clearer. Okay, so it's saying once this gets set, check and make sure it exists, and then make this image view that we created here set the image for that. So that's what's going on there. What's going on here? This is super important to understand as well, because this is how you're going to populate the cells for your collection views or table views anytime you're using this method, which is pretty much, you know, the best way to do it. So it's going to say so every time we want to render a collection view cell, this function gets called. So we have 12 images in our collection view, or our collection view array, right? So it returns 12 cells. That means this function gets called 12 times. So let's go ahead and just add a print statement. Print collection view cell date call. And I run this, we're going to see that it gets called 12 times down here. So, right, that's, I'm sure if we counted that out, that would be 12 times. So that's really important to understand, because this function gets called every time we render a collection view cell. So when we say cell.image equals images index path.row, this is what's happening. So it starts here, right? This is the first cell, or index path is 0, because remember, programming counting starts at 0. So it starts there, and we're trying to set an image, right? So we look at this images array, and we go up here. So we want to take the first image from our image array and put it in the first cell of our collection view. We want to map it that way. First image goes to first cell, second image goes to second cell, third cell goes to third. I keep messing that up, but third image goes to third cell. You guys get what I mean. So how do we do that, right? So we use this index path here. So let me just go ahead and say index path is index path.row. So we're going to see a different print statement come up here, and it's going to give you an understanding of okay, yeah, we have 15 cells, sorry guys. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, blah 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 blah. So every time this index path.row gets accessed, it gives us access to the cell that we are at, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on and so forth, all the way up until it's finished. So it looks at that images array, and this is like the same thing as saying the first time it runs, give me back the 0 element, which is this guy. The second time it runs, I want you to give me back 1. Third time it runs, give me back 2. So just every time it goes and grabs the image from that array and then puts it into that collection view cell. But we obviously can't type that out statically. We need to say index path.row. So every time that gets called, this increments up by 1 and then gives us back the corresponding image that we want to put in that collection view cell. So that's how we're setting the cell's image. Again, it goes cell.image equals the element from the array that we were looking at, based on the collection view cell that we are trying to render at that time, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then it goes into our profile cell and says, hey, we have this image variable. We call this did set guy. And when that gets set, then that's when we set our cell's image view. So that's going to be it for this video, guys. I know that's a lot, but collection views, like I said, are super important to understand how to work with as a developer if you really want to get to that next level. This is how you do it 100% programmatically. I'm sure if you guys have worked with collection views and storyboards that you've had to do a lot of programmatic code as well for setting up the size and stuff like that of the cells. And this is how you do it all programmatically. And it's pretty clean. It does take some time. Working with table views is a lot easier than working with collection views. Oh, and one more thing we need to do. These buttons, you need to create them as lazy variables. If you don't do that, your action handlers won't get executed. So let's go ahead and make sure that works. And Then we're going to be done, guys. I know this got a little long, but yeah, we see our stuff getting executed there. Okay, like I said, guys, that's it. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments. I hope everything was clear. The completed source code for this is in the link to the description as well as my courses and other related video tutorials. So thanks for watching. Hope you guys have a great day. Peace out.